let's do this like proper YouTubers do. Hello friends! Welcome to 2020. It's a shiny new year, it's a new decade, and for some of you, you have already failed your New Year's resolutions. I'm probably the wrong person to give advice on how to stick to a resolution, given that I have the impulse control of a 5-year-old child. One of the things I'm trying to do this year is stay on top of a reasonable upload schedule, like a proper YouTuber. I had the idea for this video and I thought that maybe my mad ramblings would help someone other than me. One of the things I wanted to concentrate on this year, other than the channel, is obviously the content that makes up the channel, that is to say, sewing. A thing that I do apparently still do sometimes. This year I've set myself the goal that, where possible, I'm going to try and sew for at least 20 minutes every day. That probably doesn't sound like a lot. I'm probably thinking, what can you possibly achieve in 20 minutes? The answer is almost certainly more than you think you can, and that's the beauty of this goal. 20 minutes is just short enough that you can probably find 20 minutes in any given day, no matter how busy you are and how many other things you've got on. And it's also just long enough that you'll be pleasantly surprised by how much you get done in that time. I expect that a lot of days I will end up sewing for more than 20 minutes. In fact, that's been true of almost every day so far this year. But 20 minutes as a minimum every day felt like nice, achievable baseline. So, like a lot of other people, I think that I tend to not sew for a while, and then when it comes to crunch time on the deadline for a project, do kind of marathon sewing for a full day or several full weekends. We're still not talking about how I costumed the entirety of the Regenesis finale in 2 weeks. That sort of thing isn't really sustainable unless that's what you're doing full time, which admittedly at that point I was unemployed and that was what I was doing full time. Now that I'm back in work, now that sewing is explicitly taking away from time that I have to spend with my friends and my family, even though I think it's important to take time out for yourself as well, I also want to see my husband some weekends, which is kind of challenging when you've got a massive project that needs to be done by the end of the week. Making a commitment to sew every day for a small amount of time means that instead of spending 6 hours on a project at the weekend, I can eke it out and do half an hour every day for a week and still get the same amount of stuff done. Also, committing to sew every single day means that if I don't have a looming deadline on a project, I'm still sewing, which means that I will start making time to sew clothes for myself, work on all the weird projects that I've had lurking in the back of my brain for sometimes about 10 years and just never got around to. If you've already made the time when you're going to sew, then you've already made the time to work on the stuff you want to work on. I'm really hoping that this is a commitment that's not only going to be achievable, but also a massive positive step in how I approach one of my main hobbies. And I do think that no matter how much you love doing something, it's always good to evaluate how you're engaging with it in your life and see if there's ways you can do it better. I definitely feel like I'm at the point where I'm pretty comfortable with most of the stuff that I'm making, which means that it's time to find the things I'm not so good at and start pushing myself to explore my skills more. When I'm always on a deadline to produce a finished outfit in time for a game, there's not much incentive to engage with something that's going to be challenging and might not work. Ultimately, when you pick a New Year's resolution, there's a couple of things you've really got to bear in mind. One, what you hope to get out of it, and two, how are you actually going to achieve that? I think a lot of people make grand, sweeping, noble statements, and then they turned out to be huge and terrifying. It's one thing to say, hey, I'm going to get fit this year, and it's another thing to figure out how you do that, put the time in, and then when you don't see immediate results, that can be really, really discouraging. I actually took inspiration from a blog that I followed for a while, which is called Unfuck Your Habitat. It's a blog about cleaning. As you may have noticed, I care quite a lot about tidiness. You wouldn't think so looking at this room, but I do. The suggested New Year's resolution from this blog wasn't clean your whole house over the course of the year or tidy everything at least once a week. The suggestions they made were things like, every time you go into a room, do one thing to make it better. Instead of putting things down, try and put them away. Always remember that there's 3 stages to doing your laundry or doing your washing up: cleaning, drying, and putting away. And schedule time for all 3 of those things. I felt like something similar could be applied to a lot of things in your life. Instead of making a huge grand goal for the year, decide on one small ongoing habit that you want to try and develop, and make the effort to work on it every day. Even small habits won't immediately gel. We are 5 days into the new year and already I've missed a day where I didn't do any sewing at all. But because the commitment I'd made was so small, it was only one day, it was really easy to say, hey, okay, all I failed at is doing 20 minutes of sewing on one day. I haven't set myself back for the grand goal for the whole year. When you have a daily goal rather than a huge, sprawling, year-long goal, it's much lower stakes to fail sometimes. I didn't manage to sew anything on Friday, which meant that I didn't manage to sew anything on Friday. I didn't have to find the time to make that up. I wasn't set back in my overall goals. I missed a day. But the next day I did do it, and the day after I did, and the day after that I probably will. I'm really excited to see what things I manage to produce this year. I'm aiming to play fewer LARP games. I'm definitely aiming to sew less stuff for LARP games because, quite frankly, that got out of hand. And I also have a huge number of ideas for what I'm going to do with all this extra sewing time that I'm going to have. But my goals for the year aren't that I'm going to sew all of this stuff, they're just that I'm going to spend the time doing a thing that I really enjoy. And I'm kind of optimistic that, unlike every other sewing project I've ever had, this year I might actually get stuff done on time. But I guess you're going to have to hang around until next December to find out if that works or not. Thank you for watching, as always. I'd love it if you wanted to subscribe and stick around. There's going to be some fun adventures this year, and I honestly can't wait to share them with you all. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. I'm not going to spill tea on the sound recorder. That would be bad.